Hi guys, Elle here. I'm back with a video basically about how I do a Celtic cross tarot reading. So if you have been around tarot for literally any period of time now, whether you have just started or if you've been into it and doing it for years, you have undoubtedly come across, of course, the Celtic cross, but also like myriad of variations of a Celtic cross. So I had this whole journey over the years with how I really wanted to go about reading a Celtic cross. You do not have to stick with one way of doing it that you found. I know that me personally, my Celtic crosses have evolved and changed so much over the years. I kind of got it down to like a science now, and that's sort of what I want to share with you guys today. I'm gonna try and make reference to like other popular ways of doing it so you can see some of the differences in how I do things. I do want to mention one book real quick before we get started. Here, let me show you. I only have it on my Kindle. You guys can see that. It is called How to Channel from the Akashic Records When You Are Reading Tarot Cards by Rozalia Horvath Balazsi. Again, sorry if I butchered your name. And this is seriously like one of the most underrated tarot books, I think. I very rarely hear people talk about it. There's not much info on it out there, but it is, as far as I know, still available on Amazon. Decent price. You can get the Kindle version, you can get the hard copy. And this book changed my life on how I do a Celtic cross. A lot of what you're gonna hear me talk about kind of comes straight out of this book. My Celtic crosses have become a mishmash of a lot of what she talks about and how she does it, and also other things I've picked up over the years, you know. But this is one of those books. I know there's a few others out there. Let me see if I can get to a good page. Yeah, okay, you guys aren't going to be able to read it, but basically this is, what card is this? Oh, this is like Judgment. So there's a few pages before this on the Judgment card, and then she goes through every position in the Celtic cross, 1 through 10, and gives you like an example of what that card might mean in that position. And I know a few other books do this, but it's a great way to sort of start to wrap your head around what it's like interpreting your cards in relation to that position, that spread position that they're in. Also in the book, it's really a cool book. She comes at things like, you know, you're reading to find out like what your karmic lessons are. She talks about utilizing like your third eye or your third eye screen in your head, and working on all those sorts of skills. So it's a great book. Check it out if you're interested. So, you know, like I said, I think everyone comes to a certain point when they're like, it's time to learn a Celtic cross. And though it does have a lot of cards involved, I still think it's something that most beginners try to wrap their heads around and try to put into their tarot spread arsenal. I know that's sort of what I've done with it. It is definitely one of those spreads that you can use for such a huge variety of situations because it covers so much. There's so many spread positions that are so appropriate for so many things. But while a Celtic cross might not be my favorite spread in the entire world, it's definitely a go-to. Like, I do use it all the time, along with a handful of other spreads. I think one of the problems for me, maybe why I like to not use a spread or just do a 3x3 with sort of undefined positions, that's probably my go-to now, like that's my thing. But it's because it can be friggin' hard to remember a million spreads and every single position and what that's supposed to mean. It's a lot. I know the back of my journal is filled with all sorts of different spreads. And those are just the ones that I really want to remember. There's a lot of spreads I come across and I'll mess around with them. I'll try them once or twice. And probably never use them again. Like I said, I have the ones in the back of my journal, so I can remember them, though they're certainly not memorized. And then I have, you know, a handful of kind of go-to spreads, and this Celtic cross is definitely one of them. And I'm sure part of that reason is because you come across it in like every single tarot book, so it's sort of easy to drill it into your head and to get lots of different perspectives on how to go about doing Celtic cross. So before we get started here, I am, by the way, going to use just a classic Rider-Waite-Smith. I think it'll be easier for you guys to see the cards I'm placing down. Although I am not really intending on doing like a full accurate reading. You know what? Fuck that. I'm sure that'll end up happening because it always does. But yeah, I really just want to try and explain and show you how I go about a Celtic cross and really help define and elaborate on what the spread positions mean. I know one of the things that actually really gave me a hard time at first was I would come across these, far too brief definitions of what each spread position meant. Like in some cases it was just a one-word description. And I had a really, really hard time. You know that, what is that? The eighth position, which is often just called like environment, right? Oh my God, I could not understand that position for a really, really long time. So many cards just didn't make sense in that position. Anyway, I'll talk about it more when we get to it, but that's the kind of stuff I really do want to focus on in this video. And I guess I do sort of have a few tricks on how to interpret cards like major cards and court cards. A lot of it comes from that Akashic Records book on tarot. But a lot of this stuff really is sort of specific to a Celtic cross. I literally have like a Celtic cross ritual. I say the name of the position as I lay out the cards. I always turn them over face down and go one by one. I don't always do those things with every other tarot reading, but I really do. I like my little Celtic cross ritual, and I want to share that with you. So this is my commemorative Rider-Waite-Smith deck. I have already shuffled the cards, and I did make sure that I have enough room on my table here so you guys can actually see a Celtic cross. I actually have a huge table that I use for my tarot readings. It's like a kitchen-sized table, and I can actually fit, like even in that other video when I tried to lay out 7 cards in a row for like the chakra spread, in that majors only whatever video. I actually have enough room to do that here, so I didn't realize that my camera cuts stuff out sometimes. But anyway, this should work. Oh, so actually, you know what? Sorry, before we get started, let me just say a quick word about significator cards. Your Celtic cross can go from 10 cards to sort of like an 11 card spread, depending on whether or not you like to use a signifier or a significator card. So a significator card isn't something that I normally sort of go to. More often it'll be something I use, at least in a Celtic cross anyway. By the way, significators as far as like doing a first operation or something like that, that's totally different. Of course I'd pick a significator card if I was doing that. But for the purpose of like a Celtic cross or any other kind of basic tarot reading, I tend to use a significator card more as like sort of in a bit of a ritualistic way even. Like if they're new to me, it's a way for us to talk, for me to get to know them a little bit better. People really like seeing themselves represented in a tarot card. I know I'm the same way. I like it. It's like, oh look, that's me. I'm the Princess of Pentacles or whatever. And it's even a good way to just, get the communication flowing and learn a little bit more about them and their situation. I haven't really gotten into the whole online reading thing yet, so most of my readings have been done in person, face-to-face. But I do know that a lot of people like to use more of an astrologic approach, I guess you'd call it. They have these correspondences for the cards, maybe for the court cards, and if you are like Virgo or whatever, you'll be this card, and that'll be your significator card. There's lots of different ways to go about it. In this case, I'm not going to use a significator card. Okay, so let's say that we have a client, and we'll say she. I really want to pose a question. Let's do something, not relationship, work. Let's say that this woman is having a really hard time at work. She's at her wit's end. She doesn't know if she should leave her job, something like that. She wants to know if she should leave her current job or stay at her current job. If you hear squeaking and squawking in the back, by the way, my bird is nuts today. Hi, Artie. She wants to be on camera. Are you happy now? Are you happy? You're on TV. You're on TV. Oh, you guys hear that noise? I live with that. Stop it, crackhead. Say hi, YouTube. I'm annoying today. Okay. Shh. Okay, anyway, so we have a woman unhappy with her job, contemplating whether or not she should leave her job and find a new job, something like that. That'll be our topic, our situation for our oh-so-fake reading. So one of the things, like I said, I like to do is have this, or I just do sort of have this ritualistic approach. So when I lay down every single card, I like to say this word. I don't know exactly where these specific words have come from. You'll recognize them if you're familiar with the Celtic cross. I wish I could quote exactly where I first heard them, but I'm sorry, I can't. So anyway, even though I'm not using a significator card, the very first card that I lay down, I always say is, what covers you? And then it'll go on like this. What crosses you? By the way, I am going to do a whole video on shuffling and laying out the cards at some point. But be very careful when you're laying out a crossing card, because you're turning cards sideways. And obviously it's very easy to flip it back over like the other direction, and then you'll be reversing your cards. So one of the things I always do whenever I'm laying out a crossing card is I will always do exactly that. I will turn the card clockwise and lay it down, whether it's going sort of upright and on a diagonal or whatever, because then I just always know in my head, this is just how I do it, I then always know that for it to be, I won't flip it yet, but for it to be exactly how it's supposed to be laid out, which is this way, right? You have to turn it counterclockwise. It's just something I do, and it works for me. So this would be what crosses you. And then the next would be, by the way, the ordering of these cards. That's one of the things that is different in every single Celtic cross, basically. I actually much prefer to make an actual cross with my cards as opposed to going in a circle. But you're still creating the same cross shape. It's not like things are differing there, but it can be a little confusing at first. So my next is always, the third card always goes above. And this is what's above you, or what crowns you. And then this is below you, behind you, before you. And then number 7 is the lesson. I go with the lesson. I used to use self, but I use lesson now. It's nice to just have these things to say when you lay it out. I don't know, it feels a little bit more magic. And then, where am I? 7, and then the house. Advice. An outcome. So we have you, or what covers you, what crosses you, what crowns you, or what is above you, what is below you, or what is beneath you, what is behind you, what is before you, the self, or the lesson, the house, the advice, or the hopes and fears. I've used both. I tend to go with advice and outcome. 1 through 10. 10 cards in a Celtic cross, each with a very specific positional meaning. So yeah, I'm not going to leave that there. That'll get confusing. I did have to turn my cards a little bit so that they fit. But I have to do this a lot whenever I'm in a small space. I just tweak that little bit. On my regular reading table, I have enough room to lay them out straight, so that when you scoot them underneath the cross, which is, I guess, where this Celtic cross idea comes from, right? It has that long underneath. We just moved it off to the side, but if you put it underneath this Celtic, this cross part of the spread, you'd actually create what really does look like that old style Celtic cross. So I kind of plan on taking you through exactly how I would work through a Celtic cross. Like I said, I don't always start with the cards down and turn them over one at a time. If I'm doing a spreadless spread, I love that I call it that. I am going to try and do a video on that. It might be hard to figure out how to make a video on not doing something, but we'll figure it out. But yeah, I do, depending on what I'm doing, I'll turn all the cards over at once, or this part first. But with the Celtic cross, I really do go one at a damn time. So I will start here with, the 4 of Cups. So if you did use a significator card or something, it would normally just sit like right underneath. I guess you would have it upright to start, and it would just sit there, right behind it or something, usually, you see. And that's what I do with mine. I leave it like directly underneath if it's something I'm going to use. This is a little something I always do too. I just move that crossing card down. I don't turn them over at the same time. I just put it below me for a second. And I always know that I'm going to turn this sucker counterclockwise for him to be upright. Just like over here, I kind of do the same things. For these to be upright, even though they're still sort of upright, it would go counterclockwise. Kind of do that with everything. So for me, the first card in the Celtic cross spread, is the covering card because it would cover the significator, but it's also basically the issue that is covering this person. It's the client's question. It's the reason for the reading. In most cases, the client is coming to you, the querent client, I'll probably use those words, the seeker, all these words interchangeably, but they've come to you because they need clarity or something. They've reached a crossroads, they're frustrated. That's the kind of thing that a Celtic cross is good for, like really having a question, something to explain, to expand upon, There's lots of other spreads. Actually, I'd like to do a video on that too, on what kind of spreads you can use to get to someone's question, because how many times do people come to you and they're like, I don't know what's wrong, I just want a tarot reading, But that's for another time. So yeah, this first position is all about the question. It's all about these general influences that are currently like affecting the querent, and it's all about the situation that's in question. I've even heard it described as like, this is you and all you are, and I like that, although I think it needs to be reined in just a little bit and put into the context of the situation and the question. So yes, it's all about the querent, but in relation to what is influencing them right now, what is going on in their world. What's the meat of the problem here, or the issue. So in relation to our seeker and her issues with work and these thoughts she's having of maybe leaving her job, I think that's a beautiful card to have come up. Probably what's going on for her is she is bored. She is restless. She's not terribly unhappy. She's actually even probably like quite stable, where she is in her life and in this work. But something does have to change, whether or not it is actually leaving the stability of her current job. That's what we'll keep working on, but that's the situation. So here we go. I'm going to flip that over regularly, and then turn it counterclockwise, and then we have the correct upright. The Hanged Man is actually upright here, crossing card, and I'm just going to leave it like that so it's easier to see. But that's the next card I flip over, and that is the crossing card. This is another card that really gave me a hard time for a long time. Whenever it was used in any kind of reading, it would always be, this is your obstacle, this is your challenge, is what I would hear more often. What's blocking you? What's in your way? And I have sort of moved on a little bit from that. Yes, it can 100% be that. It is often that. But I've sort of worked it into my understanding of a Celtic cross that it is more whatever is influencing you for better or for worse. So yeah, it can be more of a positive card. It can be something that gives assurance about the situation being okay in the long run, or it can be like a warning to the first card. It can be like danger, danger. It can be the obstacle. It can 100% be what is blocking you and the hurdle that you have to overcome. But it can also be a guiding card. That's up to you, however you want to interpret it, whatever your intuition says about this card. And you'd be surprised how good it is to leave things a little bit more open-ended. You won't really be unsure in the moment. It just sort of happens where you're like, oh, I know where this is going, I feel it. Oh, so actually, since this is our first major arcana card that we've drawn here, I'm going to give you just a couple little guidelines for when you have a major arcana card come up in your spread, especially in a Celtic cross, and when you have court cards come up in your spread, again, especially a Celtic cross. Majors, for me, tend to be like there's this message from your higher self that is important. It's like your soul consciousness or whatever is speaking to you, and it is sort of a bigger spiritual message, perhaps a big karmic lesson that needs to be learned. That is sort of my approach, by the way, to the entire Celtic cross. I kind of come at it like how she does in that book. Like there is karmically things going on, these influences, these energy, and this is how they're manifesting, and this is what's coming at you. So it does get a little bit prediction-y, a little bit fortune-telling-y, but there's layers upon layers, so it's really quite fun. But also when you have a court card, where I tend to go with that, I do have this general rule for readings, and I cannot remember the first place I ever heard it, but I always loved it. It's just a general guideline. These are not a hard rule that I follow by any means. But like 1 or 2 court cards in a spread tend to represent an actual person, and like 3 or more, especially in a big spread like this, they're probably not representing people, more personality traits and things like that. That's a general rule I follow. But also here in the Celtic Cross, when it does represent another person, it tends to, for me, mean that they have some sort of power over you. They have some rule over you, or you're like dependent on that person for something. You know, they're involved with you in some way, and they have some power over you. So if there was, say, a court card here in the number 2 position where we have the Hanged Man, it could be something as simple as this person who that court card is representing is maybe holding you back or has some advice that will help you, you know, go to them, something like that. In this case, since we do have the Major Arcana card here, it is definitely saying that, you know, you really should listen to your own inner guidance. And it's saying that this really is some sort of a kind of a big karmic lesson in her life. You know, it's not some little fleeting thing. This is an issue that really does need to be dealt with. It's important, and it needs to be dealt with here and now within the time frame of this reading, I would say. By the way, the time frames of my Celtic Cross readings, I tend to look at them as 6 months overall. Like by the time we get to the outcome, it's like in 6 months this sort of will be the outcome, kind of a thing. And I'll break things down for you where it's, you know, 2 to 6 months sort of here. I kind of have these vague generalizations for time frames with my Celtic Crosses. So in this case, what I would say with the crossing position for the Hanged Man upright is that there is a need for patience. It's definitely more of a positive crossing card. It may be saying, I'm just trying to give like quick stuff here, but like it could be saying that you have to learn to look at things in a different way or from a different perspective, and maybe even like stop trying to put yourself first. So when I'm doing this for real, also, by the way, I will still kind of keep these first ones, try to keep everything here brief, because by the end we're going to have everything over, and as you start making connections with other cards, things will really start to become much more clear. I feel like if I start talking too much right at first, it leads me into some places that once I see the whole thing that I might not necessarily go, but I do still like going one at a time so I can really examine this card in relationship to its position and what it means, and just get a good grounding in what this card is kind of trying to say. So then moving on, in my 3rd position up here, we have the 9 of Swords. Very often this would be like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th position in a lot of people's readings, especially if you go in a circle. I went in a cross. So what this position is this is, you know, this is the crowning position. This is above you. So I've always liked looking at this position and this position. This is sort of like conscious desires, and then down here has a little bit to do with your unconscious desires. I think that stuff is very relevant. But I think to just elaborate on that sort of thing that you often hear, right, where it's like the querent's goal in the situation, it's sometimes a little bit more the present situation or what they know they want, that kind of stuff. I think that there's a bit of this idea that it is it's something that occupies the client's mind. Consciously, yes, but what they're like kind of overwhelmed with, maybe, or just what's always on their mind, what they're worried about. This is the kind of thing that they're going to want to know if it's going to manifest and become a reality for them. Sometimes they'll want it to manifest in their life, and sometimes they won't want it to manifest. Sometimes they'll want it like wiped completely from their lives, depending on what it is. This is the kind of thing, like if they get it or if they don't get it, whatever it is that's on their mind, their success hangs in the balance. They believe for them this querent to be happy or to be sad, you know, is very dependent on whether or not this will manifest. Actually, it's kind of funny that the 9 of Swords appeared there, that kind of nightmarish Rider-Waite-Smith card. But another thing that I often associate with this position is if there's some sort of confusion when I'm talking to the querent about this card, it's one of those things, too. I think they need to stay very aware of what kind of dreams they're having, aware of what messages are being sent or being sent to them through their lives, because, spirit is always communicating with you. And that may even be why it's on your mind so prevalently, because it's being communicated to you. Anyway, whether it comes from within or without, or whether or not they are the same exact thing, if there is a court card in this position, it could simply represent, that this is something, or this is a person that you want in your life, or you want out of your life, that kind of a thing. So let's see here. What was going on? We have our sort of boredom, and then what's crossing you. We have some advice there on how to maybe get through it. And then we go to our Nine of Swords. So here, I guess, then the crowning card, what's on the querent's mind is this. She's certainly feeling a bit of shame, maybe. Let's do that. Like, maybe she's embarrassed about this situation, probably a situation at work, since we're dealing with the work realm. The situation that happened when she was, embarrassed about how she acted or how she reacted, or something that she said. It's the Nine of Swords, Let's leave it at that for now. And then I'll jump to down here, and we have the Ten of Pentacles upright. All right, so we've jumped down to the number 4 position. This is the beneath you or the below you position, often called the foundation or the basis of the matter. People say it can have a lot to do with the factors which have been affecting the situation. It's the root or the source of the issue sometimes, and like I said before, it can even be like these unconscious desires that maybe need to be brought into the conscious awareness. And all that stuff is still true. I still kind of take that stuff with me, but I think there's also this other element of it representing the client's present life, their attitudes, their fears, their beliefs. So you can see where it still has those sort of unconscious roots. This is still the root of the situation and the root of the question. And that actually makes a lot of sense here. I think that in the context of our fake reading, that it even sort of fulfills a possible outcome of these two cards, as it often does, this lower card here, this 4th card, which is sometimes the 3rd card, but it's the 4th in mine. So yeah, the Ten of Pentacles here in the 4th position is talking about, her wanting for a stable community, for a stable family, for her family to be protected, which makes a lot of sense. If she's worrying about quitting her job, she's of course going to have these fears of her family not being taken care of and not protected. But I think what this card would also be saying is that she clearly does have a well-protected family, and they support her even. I'd say to her that there may even be a need for her to just take care of her needs also. We still don't have an answer to her question by any means. We're just sort of fleshing out what is really going on in her life. But I think that the Ten of Pentacles here is more about, it really is kind of about her fears and her beliefs, and they do have the power to undermine her here. If she's worrying about if her family will be protected at the cost of creating some sort of stable happiness in her life, and that's just not something she even has to worry about. Yeah, I think that's just sort of what's being said there. I hope that makes sense. So from here, we've really looked at this whole vertical line, right? We've looked at these conscious desires, these unconscious desires or fears in both cases. I often like to go back, take a look, move that card to the side, and look at these 3 cards and see where things might be headed, what's going on. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to move on to the next card, to my 5th card in the spread, which is sometimes the 4th card, depending on how you do it. And this really is the what is behind you. So a lot of people will say it's like an influence that has recently passed or is passing from the situation. They'll call it the recent past, right? I like to look at it a little bit more as, I mean, it really is the same thing, but as the situation that is like about to end, or this condition that's about to move on or leave your life. I'd often tell someone that this is, you know, something that will be passing within like one day to usually just a couple weeks, like from anywhere from like 1 day to 2 weeks or 6 weeks, depending on sort of the severity of the situation. If it's something that's really not too dire, it tends to be less time, and it's usually a couple of weeks. If it's a bit more of like a really big situation, we'll take a look here and try and figure out what it is in a second. But if it's something bigger and, you know, obvious logic just tells you it'll take a little bit longer, it tends to be kind of 6 weeks to it till it's ending and its resolution. But it does tend to be like a situation that once it ends, it won't return. At least certainly not during the next 6 months of this tarot reading time frame that we're talking about. So if it's something positive, you would want to help them take advantage of this energy or this situation. And if it's something negative, it's okay. You're getting over it. It's about to pass, and you won't have to deal with it again for at least 6 months, pretty much. So in the case of our work problem lady here, the recent past or the situation that's about to come to an end has something to do with her feeling vulnerable. It's probably, again, I would assume it's work related, something to do with an argument with a coworker. You know, some sort of upheaval at work with probably with coworkers or friends from work or people sort of on her level. But again, this is it's fleeting because it's moving into the past, so she won't have to feel these repercussions in the very, very near future. So even it's starting to look like maybe that is literally what was keeping her from being happy at work. Was it this situation? Are these talking about the same thing? You know, we have a few more questions sort of coming up here. I think that the Nine of Swords, so you can start to look at all sorts of different things at this point, which gets real fun. I think with the Nine of Swords, she had this situation where she went with her head instead of her heart. You know, she